and what maybe you could see next offseason with how much quarterback movement is going on in the league, you can say to yourself, well, let's give Jalen Hurts an extended audition and build around the quarterback position, because if this happens again next year, which based on the past 2 years could happen, then you can maybe land your quarterback if Jalen Hurts doesn't prove that he's the guy.
It's a Football Friday here on Birds 365. McMullen and McDonald, joined by one of the best guests we often put up for you guys since we started this. So about 11 months ago, we've had Mike Kaye from NJ.com on several times. No moss. Mike Kaye from Pro Football Network joined us here on Birds 365. Mr. Kaye, what made you relocate?
It was a mix of a lot of things. I think, the opportunity to cover the rest of the league. I've already covered two markets and two teams in two drastically different markets, right? The Jaguars and the Eagles. Excuse me. And so, I just thought it was the time. I think it's cool to cover the entire league. It gives you a lot of flexibility personally and professionally. And listen, I grew up listening to you. I grew up just like everybody who's watching the show. I grew up an Eagles fan. But once you see how the sausage is made and you're a journalist, you become numb to it. You've got to be objective, which I think anybody who's watching the show and who knows who I am knows that I like to cover it right down the middle. I'll give you my opinion and be honest, but you become numb to it. And I think you look for that next challenge. And listen, covering the Eagles was a dream come true. It was, when I got in this business, that was my career goal. And I did it for 4 seasons, and I got to work alongside a lot of people that I respect, including John and Les Bowen and Paul Domowitch and Ruben Frank and Zach Berman, all of these guys who are probably guests on your show. And that was like a huge thing. But I think once Les left, it was kind of time for me to leave. You know what I mean? It was like I needed that guy in the room. But
Les is still there though. On one.
Yes, he is.
Yes.
But it was an honor to cover this team for this fan base and to work with so many incredible journalists and everything like that. But listen, Pro Football Network is different than everybody else. And I know everybody likes to say that from a national perspective, whatever. But we're covering everybody. We're covering the Jaguars. We're covering the Cardinals. We're covering the Falcons, a lot of teams that are underserviced nationally. And I thought that was really appealing. It was an opportunity to kind of take ownership in the ground floor of something really big. Before I came on from break, obviously we've got a heavy hitter in Aaron Wilson.
Yeah, Aaron does great work.
Who covered the Dolphins for over a decade, who I've always been a huge fan of. He comes from the Alex Marvez mentorship tree that I do. So that's, it just seemed like a perfect fit. I love management. I love the way they view everything. We're all on the same page. It's a really fun atmosphere to work in. I'm really excited to see what Chris Franklin does at NJ.com now that he's holding the baton. Incredible guy, just a terrific journalist and a guy who really cares about doing things the right way, which I think is beneficial to the Eagles fan base. But that's what you call a long answer. That's why I'm doing what I'm doing.
I agree with. We've had Adam on the show. I love Adam Beasley, and you mentioned Aaron Wilson, who you got to tell Aaron to do more radio hits, by the way, because he does a phenomenal job, Mike, and he's been on the forefront of the Deshaun Watson stuff, and obviously he paid a heavy price for that at one point in Houston. But I do want to start with the quarterback stuff. And there's obviously a lot of big names, and we know who all they are. But the biggest came yesterday. Nate Sudfeld gets a 1-year fully guaranteed deal from the San Francisco 49ers. Man, Adam Schefter points out, I just want to, just for the laughter of it all, the information broker aspect of this, all believing he has starter potential in this league. The 3 teams trying to sign Nate Sudfeld for $2 million. Come on. Do we have to buy this stuff? Do you guys do that differently at Pro Football Network? I want to hear what the agent's saying.
Well, the second that I saw that text message, I sent it to several people within the league, and there were a lot of LOLs.
Yeah, I mean, come on.
I mean, look, I think Nate Sudfeld's a guy that, like Doug Peterson, is a guy who's going to be just a journeyman who knows what he's doing, who's going to study hard, who's going to be a very
nothing
good
wrong with that.
Caddy for a starting quarterback. Maybe he has some plus traits, but I mean, that messaging, you know, to me, it's if he has starter potential, then you've got a problem, right? Like, I think that's, I guess that's where the sentence cut off. But listen, I'm happy for Nate. I mean, the only
great guy.
The only issue is he was on a practice squad all last year. So if two other teams thought he had starter potential, like, what are you waiting for, kids?
Right.
But like, again, look, Pro Football Network, you know, I'm not going to compare us to the other national guys. They've been doing it for a really long time. I've got a ton of respect for Schefter and Ian and all those guys. But, you know, if he heard that, that's what he heard, and he quoted it. That wasn't his opinion. He quoted it. So I think, you know, Nate's an interesting cat, and if they're going to move on from Jimmy Garoppolo, he's actually the perfect backup for Trey Lance, in my opinion. I think he's he's a guy who hasn't thrown a lot of passes in meaningful games, but he's been around some meaningful football teams and meaningful football. And I think his perspective matters.
Super Bowl backup quarterback, by the way.
Yeah, exactly. So I think, you know, I think he's a guy that makes a lot of sense for them. I just don't really agree with the messaging at the end of the tweet.
Never has someone gotten so much publicity for doing so little as the unstoppable Nate Sudfeld. If we're going to reference him, we should reference him as the owner of the Philadelphia Eagles once did. All right, no, I'd rather talk about quarterbacks who are actually going to start, like Russell Wilson in Denver. A lot over the last couple of days, Michael, about how involved were the Eagles. Did Russell Wilson put the kibosh on Philadelphia? Did the Seahawks not want to trade him because he was in conference? Here's the bottom line. He didn't come here, although a lot of people wanted him to come here and be the man instead of Jalen Hurts. Did the Eagles miss out? How would you characterize, as best you know, background information and or just your opinion, did the Eagles make a major mistake by not being the team that landed Russell Wilson?
Well, it's hard. Like, do you criticize your friends for asking out a girl and them turning you down? Like, I mean, that to me, that's, you know, I mean, we all aspire to date people who are attractive, but it's a two-way street, right? Like, that's, you know, I got lucky there in my personal life, but, you know, so I can't really relate to the Eagles. But what I would say is
we all got lucky.
Yeah, we all
outkicked the cover.
But what I would say is, you know, they did their due diligence. They at least went for it, right? Russell Wilson is an upgrade over at least 25 other quarterbacks. And as far as we know, reported wise, only two franchises got up the nerve to ask Russell to the dance, or three, I guess. 3 teams asked Russell to the dance, and only one of them ended up going to the dance and paying a lot for it. They paid a lot for that dance. So
expensive.
No, I mean, look, I think they missed out in theory. Just as, you know, the most beautiful girl in the world turns you down, you missed out on that date in that regard. But look, it's a two-way street, and he has a no trade clause, and that's kind of how quarterbacks are using their leverage now. You see the same thing with Deshaun Watson, who, according to my colleague Garen Wilson, wants nothing to do with Philadelphia. I've heard that kind of in passing as well, and I just that supports his reporting. And I think, listen, there's a lot going on there, right? And frankly, look, everybody talks about how talented Deshaun Watson is. He went 4-12 during the best year of his career right before his suspension. So, look, I'm a believer in that you're never settled until you get the quarterback. But, excuse me, but, you know, I also think it's a flawed argument to say the second a franchise quarterback comes in here, especially if you're giving up a lot for him, he can fix all woes, because that's not the case. The Eagles are not a quarterback away, in my opinion. And look, I think with the way that this offseason is going, And what maybe you could see next offseason with how much quarterback movement is going on in the league, you can say to yourself, well, let's give Jalen Hurts an extended audition and build around the quarterback position, because if this happens again next year, which based on the past 2 years could happen, then you can maybe land your quarterback if Jalen Hurts doesn't prove that he's the guy.
Mike, let me follow up, Johnny, if you let me. Russell Wilson didn't want to become a Philadelphia Eagle. Had the chance to, said no, thank you. Deshaun Watson, we're speculating, wants no part of becoming a Philadelphia Eagle. He's got a no-trade clause, and he's going nowhere unless he puts his stamp of approval on it, whoever the Texans are supposed to trade him to. Why no Philadelphia? Who should we be disappointed in that these other quarterbacks have the chance to dictate terms, and they go, oh, well, not the Eagles. Well, not who is that on? Howie Roseman, Nick Sirianni, the other players on the Philadelphia Eagles, the town of Philadelphia. Why are some of the best quarterbacks in football going, Eagles?
Well, I think it's a fair question. I think there's a lot of factors, right? I mean, I saw our pal Rob Mahdi's report that Russell Wilson was concerned about culture. Well, I don't know. Everybody I talk to within the Eagles locker room seems pretty stoked about Nick Sirianni and the way the NovaCare is functioning right now. If you went off the Doug Peterson regime, I could see that, especially towards the end, hearing some pretty negative stuff. But my understanding is that Russell Wilson just wanted to go to Denver. Like, that was like the thing. Look, I think the Eagles fan base and the Philadelphia fan base takes a lot of lumps. And listen, you've got to be a special person to play here and thrive. You have to be a special person to coach here and thrive. In some regards, you have to be a halfway decent reporter to work here and thrive. So, look, there's an expectation when you go to Philadelphia that you're gonna succeed, and some guys can't handle that pressure, and some guys don't want to take on that pressure. Denver's a top 5 market. If you've ever been to Denver, it's lovely there. And so I get why he wanted to go there. There's also a talk of Deshaun Watson wanting to go to Miami or Tampa. No state taxes. Maybe that plays into it. But I kind of, there's so many factors. You can't just say, hey, the locker room culture isn't there, because that's garbage. You're not there. Yeah. You don't know. To me, there's a lot. There can be business aspects. Philadelphia is Philadelphia, but it's also not New York from a marketing standpoint. It's not LA. It's not Miami. It's not Chicago.
Yeah.
So there's that too, which I would imagine is part of Watson's situation. Watson probably also wants to go somewhere where he's familiar or comfortable with the coaching staff. And Nick Sirianni, for better or worse, was a bit of an unknown coming into Philadelphia. Trust me, I heard a lot of that on radio and a lot of that in my Twitter mentions. Yeah. So, look, I think optics are important too. I think, we've seen what's gone on with Ben Simmons, warranted or not. We've seen what's gone on with Carson Wentz, warranted or not. And look, I think if you're a quarterback and you're watching that, people do pay attention. I will tell you, free agency is a thing where agents do pay attention to how their clients are treated, not only by an organization, but a fan base. And that is something that is on the mind of folks. But then again, I don't think it's warranted to think, hey, look, Philly's going to be tough. Well, if you're an athlete and you want to play, look, Jeffrey Lurie is one of the best owners in the league. Nick Sirianni made the playoffs in his first year with one hand tied behind his back with their cap situation. The Eagles have been to the playoffs 4 times in 5 years and won a Super Bowl within the last 5 years. So it's not like this organization is a train wreck, as sometimes it's portrayed. But I guess it just kind of, from an outside perspective, I guess these two quarterbacks didn't want to come here.
Yeah, and everything's always fluid, Mike. I'll add to that, because last year at this time, Nick Sirianni was not only a complete uncertainty, he was coming across very poorly in his opening press conference and all that kind of stuff. The Eagles looked like they were a disaster. They had no offensive skill position players. You fast forward a year, Nick's the best rookie head coach in the league. He's calmed down. He's proven himself to a certain degree. Devontae Smith all of a sudden looks like a future star. Dallas Goedert has developed to being one of the best tight ends in football. It looks a lot better now than it did 12 months ago. in quarterbacks, and I'm talking about Deshaun Watson, Russell Wilson's off the board, he might change his mind when there's not an ability to go to a certain place that he might like because of weather or state taxes or something like that. But one thing you said that strikes a chord with me is, because I hear this a lot, the Eagles are not ready to win. Now, it depends on your definition if they got a Russell Wilson or Deshaun Watson. And you're right, Deshaun won 4 games, playing phenomenally. So it's no guarantee. But this team made the playoffs. They're relative. You're telling me a Deshaun Watson or a Russell Wilson couldn't get this team to the divisional round? And once you're in the divisional round, you're a step away from the championship game. And who knows if the stars align? I don't get the opposite mentality of the hand-wringing that says, oh, no, we got to add this before we have to go get the superstar quarterback. The superstar quarterback is supposed to elevate everybody. I don't get it.
Well, that's kind of my point, right? I do think Russell Wilson would have made that difference. I think Russell Wilson was leaps and bounds the guy. If they could have landed him, absolutely. But I think there's a lot of baggage that comes with Deshaun Watson. And I would also argue...
Tons of baggage, yeah.
Yeah, I mean, I would also argue from a quarterback's perspective, if you're trading multiple first-round picks, does that quarterback really view your roster as being good enough to contend? That's something that I think is kind of factored into this that no one really talks about is if they're looking at the Denver roster and they're looking at the Philadelphia roster, right? And you're trading multiple first-round picks and second-round picks, you're not adding on top of me. I've got to basically take the roster as is for the most part and realize, like, hey, this is going to be a lot of work. This is going to be a lot of pushing and pulling. The Eagles have a ton of free agents. Both their starting safety spots are empty. I mean, they need a number 2 or 3 wide receiver. They need to improve their right guard situation. Like, there's a lot going on here. The running back long-term is in question. So, like, to me, if I'm looking at this and then I see Cortland Sutton, KJ Hamler, Jerry Jeudy, Tim Patrick, that offense, that young offensive line, like that to me is saying, look, I can get this done even though they're giving up a ton of future assets and we're not developing around me. So I think that that's also an argument to be made. And a lot of folks are going to say, well, they have 3 first-round picks this year, take the hit this year, and then move on. But they need a lot of work. They were second to last in the league in sacks. I mean, they were getting chewed up by opposing quarterbacks because of their secondary and linebacking group. Like, there's a lot of push and pull here. I agree with you. I think that they can contend. I just don't think you just plop Russell Wilson in and, hey, they're immediately a Super Bowl team. That's what I'm saying to you is, like, I don't think that Deshaun Watson has never been to the...
Well, I agree from that perspective, Mike, that nothing's ever a guarantee. I mean, you can get Aaron Rodgers. I mean, the stars have to align. We saw it. Aaron's got 1. I mean, that's the best quarterback in football. It's really difficult to win the Super Bowl. So I guess it depends definition. My definition is sort of relevancy. You're going to be in the conversation. You're going to be in a position to maybe help those stars align, that if you're playing well, you're healthy and all that kind of stuff falls into place. But look, the Chargers are in the best position in this league, and they just made the big deal for Khalil Mack. And I constantly hear this, and Justin Herbert's on this rookie deal. So they have a short window of ability to build around this cost-effective superstar quarterback.
Right.
I turn that back to Philadelphia. People don't realize how quickly the Eagles are going to have to pay Jalen Hurts if he performs at the level he did last year. He's getting paid. So this assumption that, oh, you got to build around the cost-effective quarterback, yeah, it's a really small window. That window is basically this year. Do we think the Eagles are a Super Bowl contender with Jalen Hurts? I don't know. I don't. And I don't think hitting on 3 first-round picks changes that.
Well, but what I would say to you is this. Here's how I would counter. It's not just about this year, right? If you're a GM, you have to think about 4 years in advance. So if Jalen plays as well as he did last year and then hopefully progresses, then you feel good about re-signing him. And but if he bombs out, it's cost effective. You don't have to worry about it. You've got a great roster. The next year you can build around a rookie, or you can build around a potential veteran who's going to be over where he is, because that's the trend right now. The trend is quarterbacks are turning this into the NBA. It's the one position where they can turn this into the NBA, and if they don't want to be somewhere, or they, want to, if they feel like their leverage is where it's at, they will demand a trade or try to seek some other place. And I think that's a trend that's not going to stop. So, that's a thing. Like, that's legit. Now, if you told me that they were trading for Derek Carr, I would say, okay, I get it. But again, I don't think that makes you a Super Bowl contender. I like that. Again, I just don't. I
have no problem with the Eagles' thought process of trying to go for the home run or sticking with Jalen Hurts. I guess, and I've asked Jody.
Well, but that's the thing, though, John. Right? They're trying. It's just it's not happening. So, what, like to muse about that to me is like not wasted time, but it's like, well, what are you going to do, right? Like,
yeah. Well, here's what, and Jody has heard me say this 100 times, so bear with me. 101, Jody. If Jalen Hurts plays like he did this year and gets the Eagles to the playoffs and is a Pro Bowl alternate, and he's a really solid quarterback, I thought he overachieved. I thought he had a solid season last year. That's $30 million. That's $30 million. And I don't think the Eagles want to be in that position. So here, my larger overriding point is, you're not going to have the capital you have this year every year to go get a quarterback.
Here's where I agree with John. There are three potential outcomes for Jalen Hurts this year. One is he kills it. He crushes it. You go, all right, we're extending him. Forget about 30 million, 35, 40 million. He's one of the top 5 quarterbacks in the league. The other is he stinks. He's Carson Wentz of 2019. You just have to move off him because he's the 32nd best starting quarterback. Then there's what happened this past year and what he may very well do again next year. Good, not great, middle of the pack. Got to make a decision on him. Even though they're 3 separate possibilities, the largest by leaps and bounds is the one in the middle. He's going to be Jalen Hurts of 2020 again. And then you're not 21. You're not going to be able to make a strong commitment to, hey, we got to move on, or, hey, we got to lock this guy up. Chances are he's going to stay in the middle. That's John's point, and I agree with him. That is the most likely. If we're looking into the crystal ball, what kind of year is Jalen Hurts going to have? It's going to be one of those middle years, which is going to leave everybody debating on what the hell they should do with Jalen Hurts going forward.
But also, what's the alternative? If those guys don't want to come
Russell
here,
Wilson.
right? But if he doesn't want to come here, what are you going to do?
Nothing you can do.
That's kind of my thing. And look, talking to people around the league, this quarterback class is not good. There are going to be 2 or 3 teams that really press and pull an EJ Manuel. That's what's going to happen, because that's what this year is. This is 2013, and I know there are people that, Twitter's trying to talk themselves into Carson Strong and Desmond Ridder and Kenny Pickett and Malik Willis. And you've got the normal draft Twitter stuff because they know everything. But
they do know everything.
Yeah, but the reality is, I don't think the league views this class as being very, very good. You can see that in Washington trading for Carson Wentz.
Yeah,
we have a lot of information on Carson Wentz, especially what Chris Ballard and Jim Irsay said publicly, and they still traded 2 third-round picks for him. So I think that tells you a lot about this class, both publicly and privately. And for the Eagles to not waste, but to invest a first-round pick in a quarterback in this class, I think would be a mistake. If they can't trade for Deshaun Watson and Russell Wilson because they won't, waive their no-trade clause, they're actually in a pretty good situation. It's not like they've got Taylor Heineke or, Andy Dalton or one of those guys. Yes, if he plays in the middle, they are in purgatory. There's no question about it. But historically, Jalen has improved every year of his career, especially as a quarterback. And I think that's something that they're going to try to bank on. And look, if it turns out that he makes it into the playoffs, look, we've seen head coaches in this league get fired after playoff runs. We've seen quarterbacks get traded after playoff runs. Howie Roseman's going to make the shrewd move. He's always going to keep trying. And I think that that's what makes Howie Roseman. But if you are, I don't want to say quote unquote stuck with Jalen Hurts, who, by the way, is adored in that locker room and has the trust of his teammates, you're in pretty good shape. And I think if you can build around him, at least for this year, you also make the destination a lot more appealing for a quarterback the next time a big name comes free. So I don't think they're in like dire straits. I know we talk about worst case scenarios, but just from a quarterback perspective, when you look at the landscape of the league, which I've had to do obviously over the past 2 weeks and beyond, and I will have to and beyond, nobody's got the right answer. Like the Bengals had no business overachieving the way they did and going
no business, especially the way they run their business. They had no business being in the Super Bowl.
Right, but that's the thing. Not everybody's going to be the Los Angeles Rams, and it took them a while. They've traded a lot of assets to get there. So I think this musing back and forth of, well, hey, the Eagles aren't doing enough. They are legitimately trying. Like they, as my colleague Aaron Wilson reported, they sent an investigator down to Houston. Like there's a part of the fan base that wants nothing to do with Deshaun Watson, and there's a part of the fan base that just wants the upgraded quarterback. Well, you've gotten both results there. I mean, I just don't know what you can't force somebody to work for you that has a clause like that. So it'll be interesting to see how this all plays out.
All right, Mike Kaye, ProFootballNetwork.com instead of, I don't have to screw up NJ and NewJersey.com. You don't have to worry about that anymore.
That's the whole reason why I left.
Yeah.
That's the whole, no.
Formerly, I never did that. That was somebody else. But I just think it's funny. You know what's coming. The biggest transaction of the week in the entire sports world. Jeff Hardy to All Elite Wrestling. How excited was Mike Kaye when he heard that goopy music on Wednesday nights?
You know what? The audio kind of drowned out with that bass. And so I was like, wait, is that, I mean, I knew it was coming, but I texted a couple of AEW employees and was like, okay, cool. You've got me to pay for pay-per-views for the first time in 20 years.
So you texted Marvez is what you're saying.
Well, yeah. Hey, I'm not going to reveal my sources. Anyway, so, you know, to see Jeff Hardy and Sting in the ring again after their debacle in TNA when Jeff was, like, inebriated and that whole thing was very cool because I grew up a massive Sting fan. I grew up a huge WCW guy. Sting was my favorite wrestler ever. And when he basically retired towards the end of his career, the No Mercy ladder match, that's when I discovered the Hardy Boys and Jeff Hardy was throughout my teenage years. I dyed my hair like him. I went to Sergeant Slaughter's house dressed as Jeff Hardy. He loved the costume. Jeff and Matt.
Is that Burlington, North Carolina?
What?
Burlington, North Carolina?
Yeah, it was in South Florida. He was dating a friend of mine's mom. If I said that properly, I'm a writer. I should probably know how to write. They signed I was telling Marvez the other day, they signed a picture for my bar mitzvah present from my friend Tommy, was them signing a thing, like a personalized thing for me, which I'm sure is still at my parents' house. But yeah, no, Jeff's a big deal to me. And I texted Alex, I was like, it's my bar mitzvah again. And you know, I mean, I probably wouldn't have debuted him in Estero, Florida, of all places, but, you know, I mean, he came free, and that's what it is. Yeah. Listen, I have friends who are just not about Jeff, and I get it. He's been through a lot. But if you go through that card and think about how many matchups, to me, he's a top 5 acquisition for them because you can put him in literally any match and sell it. He appeals to so many different people. Especially, you know, the locker room. I mean, all of those guys grew up. Like, if you look at Luchasaurus, he's got tattoos like Jeff. You know, Wardlow, huge Jeff Hardy fan. Darby Allin, huge Jeff Hardy. Like, there's so many guys in there who grew up watching him. So he's kind of a Danielson-like guy, and we haven't seen him versus Danielson. We haven't seen him really versus Moxley. We haven't seen the Hardy Boys in a while against the Young Bucks. The tag division's incredible. And so I think this is going to be very good for business. Look, WWE's constantly going to win. I think they're in a different business, frankly. But I think this is huge. This was a huge acquisition. It does move the needle.
It's great. It's great that Tony Khan has created this for professional wrestling and, high-paying jobs. But, man, he's spending a lot of money. God bless him.
This one's actually going to pay off. I'll give you something interesting. In 2000, the Hardys sold more merchandise than Stone Cold Steve Austin, The Rock, and I believe
Jeff was a big star. Jeff,
right? You remember he had that feud with Randy Orton it was my freshman year of college, 2007, 2008. He was the biggest thing in wrestling. There was no if Jeff did not have his off the ring, I guess, incidents, he would have been the biggest star in the entire world. There's no question. And he doesn't even talk really. He's just got.
But my argument to that would be that's been a while.
It's definitely been a while. But he's the one guy that I think, like Shawn Michaels, can outlive the nostalgia effect. There's certain guys that just have it, and you're always interested in what they're doing. Like the dude rolled in with his ponytail down to here. He looked like one of the founding fathers. And he got the biggest pop of the night.
Well, little inside baseball. Tony said Darby Allin is the modern Jeff Hardy. And I said, no, he's not.
No, he's not. Not even close. Coffin drop, diving backwards.
I mean, they take insane risk, but Jeff appeals to literally everyone.
No, there's an it factor, and he has the it factor. Yeah. I would agree with that.
Let me get one wrestling question in and one more football question for you before we let you run, Michael. Number one guy you mentioned, Wardlow. He is broken with the Pinnacle. He wins the Face of the Revolution. Major push. Short-term.
Well done, Jody. I can't keep all those things
to the freaking moon. So here's how I would book it, right? So he faces Scorpio Sky for the TNT title next week. You have MJF interfere because, frankly, he's eclipsed the TNT title, and you want to keep pushing him. You never want him to lose, right? One of the problems the WCW ran into with Goldberg is they put the U.S. title on him, and he just skyrocketed. Their merchandise was up, the TV stuff was up, and then they had to figure out a way to get the world title on him. And then it booked him into a corner. They made the U.S. title look meaningless by I hate when they do that. They recently did that on NXT with Keith Lee, who's no longer there. But whenever you put two titles on a guy and you just say, He'll keep the world title. He'll just throw this other one to a tournament. It demeans the title, and I think the TNT title is way too young and way too, hot right now to take it off him. So what you do is, you have MJF cost him the TNT title. You do the feud with MJF. He kills MJF, and then you go from there. I think that's what that promo was setting up. But I love that they put the title on Scorpio Sky. I thought when they originally started, he was probably my favorite guy that they had on the roster. But I think
gotta get the big title off Adam Page. Just doesn't. Great wrestler. Great worker.
I think Cole's gonna win it if they do a rematch. So
gotta get it on.
But I didn't love that promo back and forth last night or the other night. But anyway, what I would say is this: Wardlow will be world champion by this time next year. He's the next original.
That's way off. I thought it'd be quicker than that. All right. One last Eagle question.
Sure.
We'll make you Howie Roseman. You inquire about DK Metcalf with Seattle because they're going back with every building. Eagles need a veteran wide receiver. You take a look at the free agent group. The ones that you want are more expensive than you think they're worth. The other ones, do you really upgrade enough? So you got a DK Metcalf, year to go. Get him cheap for this year. Then you got to make a call on him. You offer a first-round draft pick. Someone higher in the first round than you offers their first-round draft pick. And Seattle says, well, we'll give him to you for your one, but it's got to be your one plus. Because otherwise we've got someone who's willing to, let's say, Washington at 11 or a Cleveland at 13, say they'll give up their first round pick. You're sitting there. You've got to offer the best 150, and that's still not good enough. You going a 1+ for DK Metcalf?
Seattle needs a left tackle.
Andre
19
Dillard.
and Andre Dillard.
Andre Dillard.
Okay.
19 and Andre Dillard for maybe DK and a 5th. Like, duh.
Damn, you're a good general manager. That was, man, you
Hold
put
on.
that deal together pretty damn quick, Kaye. I'm impressed.
I mean, look, here, you want to sweeten the pot? You want to make it a little bit more interesting? They also need a quarterback, too. And guess who's from the Washington area?
Gardner Minshew.
Who went to Washington State. He's technically from, I think, like the South, but hence the mullet. But look, you're putting Andre Dillard in a safe space. He's from Washington State.
Yeah,
and by the way, they're best friends. Gardner Minshew.
We're going complete circle here. We started talking about Nate Sudfeld and the fact that he's not a starting quarterback. Can we acknowledge that as well? Gardner Minshew isn't a starting quarterback either. Why would you go there? Does Seattle need a backup quarterback? Because that's what Gardner Minshew is.
There are not 32 starting quarterbacks here. Somebody's got to play.
Yeah, there's not 16 starting quarterbacks in the league, if you ask me. But
and Gardner Minshew.
So Nate Sudfeld is a starting quarterback. So are you guys ready to retract your statement about Nate Sudfeld? What are we talking about? Starting quarterback? Well, you're telling me he is because there aren't 16 starting quarterbacks.
My only point for breaking that up is that everybody's great this time of year. Agents feed this information. I wanted Mike to explain that, but anyway, it went in a poor direction as usual. But I appreciate Mike Kaye.
It's because I didn't get that stateside. It's because I didn't get that stateside yet.
You never show
this
up
is coffee,
anywhere.
John. This is coffee.
And you got no shot now, Mr. National Reporter. You're not an Eagle guy anymore.
No, he's still on board. I tell you what, I'm going to Wine Warehouse to so if you're in the area, I'll text you. And
I'll show up like Batman. Are you kidding me? Vodka. Come on.
Send up the Jeff Hardy signal and get shows up anywhere, anytime, any place.
I gave a free plug. You should never do that. Radio/streaming 101. I gave out a free plug.
Anyway, that sells stateside, it's okay with us because they are an actual sponsor. So any good liquor store out there that sells stateside, yes, get there and wait for Michael Kaye and make sure you buy him a bottle. Send the receipt to either me
and read Mike at Pro Football Network at Mike _EK. You got to stop
it's
that.
The worst,
but there's too many Mike Kays
in all of football.
Yeah. You got to put it up. You got to put it up in your little StreamYard Zoom feed. You got to put like Jody and
I trust Xander to put it up. Where's Xander's help?
He doesn't have control over your.
No, but he could put it on the little lower third.
Yeah, all right, Xander, do that. Yeah, you got a good point.
There
you go. Oh, you can do it. There it is.
Xander's got the control over everything. We talk about Harry Roseman having the powers. There
it is. At Mike _E_K. There it is.
Yeah.
I got to make you work for it.
Yeah, exactly right. And you did just that. Mike, thanks. We're going to have you on just as much on your national perspective as your local perspective. Thanks for jumping on with us today.
Thanks, boys.
Thanks,
Mike Kaye here with us on Birds 365. All right. For those of you who are not wrestling fans, I feel the need to apologize. Not really, because I enjoy it as much as I do, as does McMullen.
And Mike enjoys it. So what? So suck it up.
You're gonna have to put up with 12 minutes of it every once in a while here on the show. We'll come back and talk more Eagles. EAGLES Eagles coming next here on Birds 365.